Good morning, Copenhagen. How are we doing today? Good? We've got a good thumbs up at the back there. Yes! Friday morning, last day. I hope you've had a fantastic Copenhagen Developers Festival. It has been so much fun. And it's great to see lots of you here in the morning after an amazing concert last night. So thank you very much for coming along to this talk. Today we'll be talking about GitHub Copilot. I'm Michelle, or Mish, feel free to call me Mish. I'm on the developer relations team at GitHub. I'm going to be talking about how to get the most out of GitHub Copilot. So I'm going to cover off a few different things today. First of all, we'll just set the scene for artificial intelligence. Not going to dive into this too much. You've probably been hammered with what AI is and how it works and examples. And if you're at Damo's talk last night, we saw the doom and gloom side of it, right? Who was there? Fluffy Chicken versus Skies? Yeah, a few people. So I won't hammer on that too much. Talk a little bit about some of the applications of AI, mainly so I can understand from the audience who is using AI and what kinds of things are you using. Talk about what GitHub Copilot is. We'll see a demo of GitHub Copilot and some of the different things you can do with GitHub Copilot. We'll talk about how to get the most out of it too. Lots of people at the moment are starting to use GitHub Copilot and other AI tooling, and they're wondering, how do I actually get the most out of this tool? So we'll talk about how to get the most out of that. We'll talk about this idea of prompt engineering as well. Talk a little bit about the concept of pair programming and the idea that we are not the ones who are just letting the AIs go off and do the things. We actually are working with these tools. We'll talk about conversational AI, this style of back and forth with our AI pair programmer. So artificial intelligence, talked about a lot at this conference, but the main thing that I wanted to ensure that we're all on the same page with is the definition of AI. This one's from IBM. I really love this definition. And I think it's really good because it succinctly puts together what AI is. And it's that it is something that leverages computers and machines to mimic the problem-solving and decision-making capabilities of the human mind. We're not going to dive into this today, but this is the reason why a lot of people are worried about AI, how far it's going to go, whether it's going to take our jobs, because the idea of AI and the definition of AI is literally to think and act like we do. But we're not going to dive into that today. What I really want to talk about is this idea of generative AI. Artificial intelligence itself has been around for a long time. But the idea of generative AI is relatively new. And the reason it's so different is because it's probabilistic and non-deterministic in nature. Artificial intelligence up until generative AI and traditional technologies up until now have been very deterministic. So if I do X, Y happens. If I click a button, this thing happens. If I'm driving my car that's got AI technology and I start to veer off the road, the car and the AI puts me back into the middle. As a user, I do something, I get something. That's deterministic. The difference with generative AI is that it's non-deterministic. It looks at probability. It looks at what have you done? What have you given me? What is the context around what you are talking about? And then I'm going to determine what I generate for you from that. So I want us to all keep that in our minds as we're looking at the types of things I'm going to talk to you about today. So ChatGPT, one of the first Gen AIs out there. Who's used ChatGPT? Pretty much everyone. We saw a little bit of it last night too. Now the thing with ChatGPT, and Damo mentioned this as well, is that it's very, very good at writing and constructing well-written sentences. It uses words like delve, which we've seen has become much more used since the advent of ChatGPT. But it might not be factually correct. So we need to understand what this AI is actually designed to do, which is write and construct good sentences for you. Artwork. Who's used any of the artwork generators? DALL-E, Midjourney. The bunny on your right, my left, the bunny up there was done by one of my friends when Midjourney was first released. I was like, how long did it take you to do that? He spent 120 hours in the AI generator, refining the prompt to get what he wanted. The rose there is just something I just quickly spun up out of one of those AI generated things. And I'll send you, at the end of this, I'll put up a link to all the things that you can try. Now, a lot of people are starting to use pair programming and AI developer tools when it comes to coding. The thing with AI pair programming is it's designed to be a pair programmer. It's designed for us to work with it to ensure that we as developers can do the things that we love doing. We can code easier. We can write better. We spend less time looking and searching for different things. Now, there are a bunch of different AI pair programming developer tools out there, but the one we're going to look at today is GitHub Copilot. Who in the room has used GitHub Copilot? A few people. Who hasn't? Has anyone not used it yet? Okay, there's a few people. So hopefully this will help you, and hopefully this will be a good, if you've already used it, you'll get some extra tips and tricks on how to use it a little bit better. And for those who haven't used it, you're going to see a little bit about how it's actually used as well. So GitHub Copilot is an AI pair programmer that works with you. It helps you code faster by being more than just autocomplete. Here, it's built right into your editor, but I'll talk about how now GitHub Copilot is so much more than just your IDE. GitHub Copilot is being trained on all the public code available on the internet, so it's kind of like having the collective knowledge of all the world's developers at your fingertips. This is the part I really love. So, without talking too much more about it, let's actually look at a demo. To use GitHub Copilot, I'm going to start in my IDE. For me, I love VS Code. So I'm going to go to VS Code. I go to my extensions. I type in Copilot or GitHub Copilot, and I look for GitHub Copilot and install that as an extension. Once I've got that, I can enable it, I can disable it, and I need to ensure that I've got the status set there as ready. Now, you do need an active subscription of GitHub Copilot to do this. I'll talk about that in a little bit. We can see there, once we've got it all up and going, status ready, we can now start using GitHub Copilot. So this is one of the very first times I used GitHub Copilot just after it was released. I like doing Twitch streaming. I was on Twitch. I like doing live coding. I had a JavaScript challenge that I was working on, and this question or this challenge popped up to me, and I thought, I haven't done JavaScript in like 9 months. I can't remember where to start. But luckily I have GitHub Copilot, and I gave GitHub Copilot some context around the type of thing that the challenge was designed to do. So here we want to reverse a sentence. So to start with, I thought, well, just GitHub Copilot reverse a sentence, gave me one-line answer for reversing a sentence. And I was like, that's okay, but I would need a little bit more context. So I provided a few more comments there for exactly what I wanted. So start the new sentence with a capital. No start of the sentence should be capital unless it's a name of a person or place. And the end of the sentence must contain the original punctuation from that. So I put all this in, and GitHub Copilot goes, okay, I can start with a function, reverse sentence. Well, that's a good spot to start with. And it's even given me a very meaningful name for this function, just reverse sentence. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And for me, being not a developer by background, I really like to work through a problem in the way that I would as if I was physically given this problem. So if somebody gave me a sentence written out on paper and said, reverse this and do all the things, how would I do that? And so I'm working through this, and I'm writing comments in as I'm going to give GitHub Copilot a little bit more context as I go. Now, GitHub Copilot is helping me out by providing some of these lines of code. Here, it's even helping me try and provide the comments as well. So here, when we're being provided with a suggestion by GitHub Copilot, it comes up there in that kind of like ghost-like text. It's kind of like grayed out, and it's a little bit harder to read because we've got the comments in grey, but it's less grey. And to accept what GitHub Copilot is giving me, all I need to do is press Tab on the keyboard. Now, you might notice too, I'm not just blindly accepting what GitHub Copilot is giving me. If I did that, I could do the Homer Simpson, get a chicken out, tab, tab, tab. That would be a very, very boring developer's job. No, I'm not just blindly accepting what I'm being given. I'm working with GitHub Copilot. So sometimes I'm accepting what GitHub Copilot is giving me, backspacing it a little bit, typing over it. I'm going back and highlighting things and changing them a little bit. So I'm working with GitHub Copilot. That there, the function, the punctuation one is one of my favorite things that GitHub Copilot gave me. I didn't have to go and type out all the punctuation. I didn't have to go to Stack Overflow and look up what that regular expression is. GitHub Copilot just gave it to me there. So it's helping me out. Now, what I really want to emphasize with this is called a co-pilot. You've probably heard there's a few co-pilots out there now, but it's called co-pilot because we are the pilot. We are still in charge of what we write. We are still in charge of what we ship at the end of the day, and we are responsible for that code. We are using GitHub Copilot. We don't just say, yep, the AI wrote it and off it goes, off it gets shipped. No, we need to work with these systems to get what we want, to understand what we want, and to ship out the correct code. So we can see here, in probably a few minutes, I was given 25 lines of decent code. For those keen eyes out in the audience, you might say, well, there's actually a few bugs in that code. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But I thought, okay, this is pretty good. This worked for those sentences that I was given as part of the challenge. And I was like, cool, we're able to do this. This is great. Now, I'll come back to this in a little bit. But when we first showed this off, this was back in 2021 now, right at the end of 2021, people said things like, it's just magical. It's mind-blowing. If you've heard of a company called Instagram, they tried this out and they were like, this is the most mind-blowing application of machine learning that we've ever seen. Now, bear in mind, this is just before ChatGPT was really commercially available to the public, so developers were getting their hands on this first. And this one too, it works so well, I'm never going to develop software without it again. Those people who put their hands up who are using GitHub Copilot, can you think back even like a year or a couple of years ago and how did I code? Yeah, we got some. No, I would never code again without GitHub Copilot. It's just such a great tool for working with, to save time, to help me write my code, and to provide me with suggestions that I might not have thought about. Now, the one everyone's really excited about now, and hopefully a lot of you, is everyone in the room, some people in the room using GitHub Copilot Chat? This is the one that got people really excited. So we released this not too long ago after the original GitHub Copilot. So what I showed you just before is called GitHub Copilot inline functionality. We are using GitHub Copilot line by line to help us write lines of code and can suggest functions of code as well. But that's inline functionality. What we have now is GitHub Copilot Chat, which allows us to have more of a conversation with our AI pair programmer to get more information, to provide more context, and to work with our AI pair programmer in the same way we would as a senior developer. Now, my colleague Damo is down the front here. If we were going to work on some code and I said, hey, let's build this thing, Damo wouldn't just say, yeah, here's some code, here's some lines of code, lines of code. Lines of code. We would have a conversation about, no, Damon's going, no, I would just give you lines of code. But we would have a conversation. What do we want to build? What do we want to do with this? If he's a more senior developer, so if I have questions, I can say, what does this do? How could we do this better? We have a conversation to ensure we get a better outcome for whatever it is we are building. So GitHub Copilot Chat, again, works in the IDE. Here I've got it in VS Code again. It's a separate extension, but when you install GitHub Copilot now, it installs both of them for you together. And I'll talk about which platforms and things GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot Chat are available in as well. So I've got GitHub Copilot Chat there. I can see we've got status ready for both GitHub Copilot and GitHub Copilot Chat. So now I can start having a conversation with our AI pair programmer. So if we have a look here, it says, how can I help you, Mish? Now I've got a blank screen right here. There's not really any code on the screen. There's nothing really happening. And I can go and say, how do I do this thing? So can you help me I like making video games. People like making video games in the room, or at least playing games. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to play a game. So how can I make a Space Invader, or help me make a game? And what I really like about GitHub Copilot right here, it hasn't just gone, yeah, sure, have some lines of code and start doing it. It says, sure, I can help you make a game. What are your requirements for this game? What preferences do you have for this game? And which programming language would you like to use for this game? Now, again, this is very human, right? So if somebody came up to me, somebody in the audience said to me, oh, Mish, you're a little bit of a developer. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. can you build me a website? I wouldn't just say, sure, let me just hack up a website. Yep, here you go, here's a website. And they're like, what did you build me? I didn't tell you what I want. I'd say, sure, I can possibly build you a website. What kind of website do you want? Is it going to be static or dynamic? Is it going to have multiple pages? Do you need to be able to update it? What's the purpose of this website? That is exactly what GitHub Copilot is doing here. So once I look at this and say, okay, yes, you've given me some good answers there, we can have a look and go, okay, I do have some requirements for this game. Let's build it in Python. I learnt Python at uni, so might as well build it in Python. It goes, sure, here are the steps to actually do this in Python. Do you have any more questions? How else can I further assist you? I wish some colleagues did that. And it says, cool, so to create the game window, we need to do this. And now it's providing me with some of the code. Even when it provides code, it doesn't just say, yes, here's the block of code. It says, here's the code, and here's what it does. I'm going to explain this to you. So now we actually learn a little bit more from our pair programmer. We're not just sitting there accepting the information. We're not just absorbing it and just putting it into the code and not having any understanding of what we're doing. So in here I thought about, okay, what if this is a junior developer and we didn't even know how to actually initialize any of this? So it's even giving me the instructions on how to save and put this text or put this code into a file so we can get started there. And again, we don't have to blindly accept that. We can go through and make some changes as well. But it's giving me 24 lines of code just there as well. And I really like this too. It should open up the game window, should do all this. Now, I was rather vague at the start of this when I opened up GitHub Copilot and was like, just make the game. I was like, okay, well, do you have any more requirements for me? So what if we actually ask and give it more context to start with? So here I'm going to say, I'm going to use the /new command. I'll talk about commands in a minute. I say, let's make a game. But let's write it in Python. I want it to be played in a browser, in a game window. I want the enemies red, the player blue. I want a score counter. And I want a border around the window. And GitHub Copilot goes, yeah, you've given me a lot more information this time. I can probably start writing you some code almost straight away. I've given a lot more information. In the same way that if we called up, say, a travel agent and said, I want to go on a holiday, they don't just go, yeah, sure, here's the tickets, off you go. And you're like, where am I going? But if I had called a travel agent and said, I'm in Australia, in Melbourne, I want to fly to Japan for a holiday with my friend, I want to go for 3 weeks, I want the cheapest fares available, and I would like to see some hotel rates. They would probably start showing me some options because I've given more context to start with. And I love this too. GitHub Copilot says, so I've given you all this code and some information about how to make a game, but please note, Pygame is actually not designed to run well in a web. Maybe you should consider something like Phaser. And I'm like, cool, we're learning some more here as well. So GitHub Copilot again isn't just saying, oh yeah, you got no idea what you're doing, but I'm just going to give you some code anyway. Here, have some Python code for this game. It's probably not going to work very well in a browser. It actually gives me some more information so we can learn along the way. Here's that beautiful code that I wrote before. Now, when I did this, I was like, oh, this code is so good. And I came back to it a little while later when GitHub Copilot Chat was released, and I was like, let's actually look at this code and figure out if it actually works for more than just the sentences that I was provided with for that little challenge. And so I looked in here, so we can ask GitHub Copilot first of all, just to make sure it understands what we're talking about. Let's use workspace explain. So workspace is look at the whole space, just explain the code to me. And it's like, cool. Now I'm saying, let's actually test this code out. Well, I want to see if this actually is good. So it goes, cool, we can actually write some tests for this. And it's given me a couple of tests there that I can do. Who likes writing tests? Anyone like writing tests? Oh, there's a couple of people. For those of you who don't like writing tests, this is great. So I said, we've heard about this thing called Vite test for doing some JavaScript. And it's like, yeah, this is pretty good. Here's some tests for it. I'm going to get rid of that the comments up the top there, and I'm going to use this nice function called /fix. Just fix my code. And it's like, okay, it's giving me some stuff there, and that looks all right. So we'll try that out first. We've got these tests we can run against this now. I'm not going to show you this in this talk, but I do a whole talk on using GitHub Copilot for testing, and most of that failed. And then we wrote it all nicely and got all the tests passed. And GitHub Copilot can help us write tests as well. I'll also take this opportunity that GitHub Copilot can do more than just Python and JavaScript, which I've just shown you a couple of examples of Python and JavaScript. It can do more than just writing unit tests there, invite tests. It can write a lot more as well. So here it is. So we've got GitHub Copilot jazzing up our code there. And we can see we've got those tests there as well. And we've imported those new ones. I really like this one too. So they're those tests that GitHub Copilot just gave me. And I can say, have I missed any edge cases? That's one thing we think about in testing, right? How can I make these tests better? Have I thought about all the different options that this is going to use, all the different combinations of how this test's going to work? And GitHub Copilot comes up with all these different tests cases. And I was like, great, you've come up with some edge cases for me. Write the tests for the edge cases. Don't just tell me about them. So we can go and even write those as well. And I really like this because for that one person who liked writing tests, you would probably like doing this. But for all the rest of us out there, we have to sit there and think about what do we need to test. What is a good test for this? We don't have to do that anymore with GitHub Copilot. It can just help us write those tests. And again, we can change them as we need to go. Translating code from one language to another. Does anyone recognize this code on screen? Couple of people? Yeah, couple of people? COBOL. I saw this and went, who uses COBOL now? Does anyone? We saw one person recognize it, so no one really uses COBOL. So this is some code that one of my colleagues wrote, and he gave it to me. I was like, can we update this or something? So I'm going to use GitHub Copilot here. We're going to have a look at the code. So there's the code there. It's however many lines long. I think this goes down to 300 and something lines long for this code. There we go. 230 lines long. So I'm going to open up GitHub Copilot chat. I'll get it to explain to me what it does. So we have a little bit of understanding what it does. So this is a COBOL program, and it does this. So it's a server. We can handle communications. And it's giving me a next suggested question. I like that about GitHub Copilot. Provides the next suggestion. Can we translate this into Java? More people are using Java now, right? So just translate this code. And it provides me with the steps that would be required to go and translate this code, and then translates it all for me. And I'm going, okay, that looks all right. And we've got some code here. So we go through and have a look. We check the code, make sure we're checking what our AIs are giving us. And we can go, okay, this looks good, and insert that into a new file. And we've taken our 230 lines of code and put it into a nice 46 lines of succinct Java code, right? So there's the original code there, down to 230 lines. And we're back at 46. And it's a little bit nicer, but GitHub Copilot can translate code from one language to another. We could also look at using GitHub Copilot in other contexts as well. So I've shown you how to use GitHub Copilot in your editor. I'll talk a little bit about which editors it is available in a moment. But we can use GitHub Copilot chat in other contexts as well. So this is GitHub Copilot on the web. Now, I found this open source project. At GitHub, we do an open source project showcase where we showcase some of the projects that have released major version updates that month, and we showcase them. And this one popped up on my radar. I was like, Easy Excel, that sounds cool. And I had a quick look at it and went, oh, it's not in English. How do I read that? Now, I could use Google Translate to actually translate this and just line by line have a quick look at it. Even the website, it's not in English either. Again, I could use Google Translate. But I can go and ask GitHub Copilot, what does this project do? And because I asked in English, it responds to me in English. And it says, yeah, it does this. And I was like, cool. Because I'm looking at major version updates, there's a new update in June. Can you tell me about it? It's like, yeah, it does this. And is there an update for 4.01? And it goes up. Do my work for me, GitHub Copilot. Write me the summary for this project and the latest update. And it's done that there. Thank you. You're welcome. I've heard, I don't know how true this is, so you don't have to quote me, but I've heard that if you are polite to your AIs, you get better responses. So that's why I say please and thank you all the time. It's like, you're welcome. If you need any further assistance, I will be more than happy to assist you. So be nice to your AIs. But this is great where I can ask it in my natural language and it responds to me in that language. We can use GitHub Copilot via the terminal. Who likes using the terminal and working in the terminal? A few people? This is GitHub. This is a very basic one. We can ask GitHub Copilot to explain what version control is. We can also use it to suggest commands for us. How do I merge a pull request that's got conflicts? How do I look at the latest releases? How do I write a release? And we can go through and use GitHub Copilot to help us there as well. Who's got a phone? Everyone got a phone? Who's got GitHub Copilot on their, GitHub Mobile on their phone? GitHub on their phone? Cool. Those people, everyone else who had their hands down, go to the App Store, iOS or Android, download GitHub, and you can use it on your phone. And if you've got the latest versions, those who already have it, make sure you've got the latest version. You can go and use GitHub Copilot chat on your phone. Again, this is ToolJet, and this is on my profile. So I'm asking, okay, what does this do? Yada, yada, yada. But am I up to date with my fork? So there's a fork on my profile, and it says, well, yeah, you're a bit behind. Okay, well, I haven't looked at this for a while, so I'm a bit behind. Yes, please. See, I'm using nice language again. Yes, please, give me the instructions on how to update this fork. But hang on, I'm on my mobile, so can I perform these steps on my mobile phone? And it provides me the steps there to go and update this fork on my phone, which is pretty cool. So for those of you who had hands down, I haven't tried GitHub Copilot, go and try GitHub Copilot. It's free for 30 days. Go and try it with some personal projects, some open source projects. It's really fun. Myself and Damien are also running a workshop later this afternoon where we'll be going 2 hours through GitHub Copilot. We'll give you all access to GitHub Copilot, and we'll be there to help you and walk you through some things. So if you want to come try it this afternoon, come and see us as well. Now, I want to talk to you about this idea of prompt engineering. Who's heard of prompt engineering? Few people. This is the idea of giving very clear instructions to a machine so it can understand what we mean. Now, when I was showing you some of those demos, I was being relatively specific in what I was asking. And in some cases, I would get back from GitHub Copilot something I'm like, oh, it's not exactly what I wanted from GitHub Copilot. So I can go and refine my question. I can work with my pair programmer to ensure that I get what I want. Now, this is really important. We often don't think about this with AI because some people think that AI can read our minds. Some people think, no, it can't actually read our minds. We have to be clear about what we ask. So if we go to a browser, whatever browser of choice you'd like to use, I'm not going to name any. If you go to browser and type in pineapple, what are you going to get back? Probably lots of pictures of a pineapple, maybe the Pen Pineapple song on YouTube. But if you're looking for a recipe for a pineapple upside down cake, you are probably not going to find it by typing in pineapple because you weren't specific enough. So we need to be specific and intentional about what we ask. So here's some ideas we can think about when we're looking at prompt crafting. So for those examples that I showed you, I followed, in most cases, but I followed good syntax and naming conventions. So GitHub Copilot gave me this one, but if I was going to ask for functions as well, think about the types of things we're asking for. Being meaningful, being intentful. I was specific about what I asked. So in that first example when I showed you the new game, I wasn't specific, so I didn't really get exactly what I wanted straight away. But in the second example of creating the game, I was a bit more specific about what I asked. And so I got more of what I actually needed, right? So be specific about what we asked. Again, if I say to Denny in the crowd, build me an app, he's going to go, what kind of app? Again, be specific. I reviewed and I changed my code along the way. This is very important. As I said, we are the pilot. We are in charge. We need to work with our AIs to ensure that we are checking the code, we're reviewing the code, and we're not just blindly accepting what we're doing. Now, if we are unsure, somebody came to me and said, what about a junior developer working with GitHub Copilot for the first time? I said, well, what would you do in a normal situation? If you're working on, say, a project for university or you're working on something at work, what would a normal junior developer do? They would probably go and ask someone, right? So ask the people around us as well. Don't just always ask the AI. If we're unsure and we're like, I'm not sure GitHub Copilot how correct you are there, and I'll give you an example of where it was wrong and someone in the community corrected me. we can look at various methods of interacting with GitHub Copilot. So in the very, very first example I showed you, GitHub Copilot inline chat. That's when we're just working within our lines. We're providing a few comments and we're working and it's providing us lines and functions of code within line. Then we have our chat feature, so where we have the little box on the side and we type in what we want. And then I only showed you a very brief example, but when I highlighted the code and use that /fix command, that's called GitHub Copilot inline chat. So we can highlight a block of code, Control-I on the keyboard, and bring up the GitHub Copilot chat inline functionality. So then we're giving GitHub Copilot chat a little bit more narrow view of the code that we're asking about in chat, because in the chat box, and I'll talk about this in a moment, in the chat box it then looks at the whole context. I'll show you that in a moment. So again, being specific about what we ask. Now this was a picture that I created on one of those AI generated things. I was very, very specific about what I asked. So I'm going to read out the prompt. So for this one I said, science fiction, fantasy, futuristic city with a neon close-up style with a Robotron-style bike somewhere in the image. Did I get close to what I was asking from that? Yeah. Again, so being very specific and very intentional about what we ask, we get better results. So when it comes to context for GitHub Copilot, it takes a number of things into account. So here's my VS Code screen here. It takes into account, firstly, it's training data, so all the data points, all the public code available on the internet, that's context, right? That's the data. The second thing it takes into account is what is the code on screen that it can see in that open file. So in this case, it can see the test that I wrote for the JavaScript reverse sentence. It can see that, so that's the second piece of context. The third piece of context is whatever else is open in those other tabs. So GitHub Copilot can read those open tabs. So because I'm creating tests for that function I wrote, by having that function open, GitHub Copilot can read it. So that's when people say it's reading my mind, it's writing readmes in my style, or it's using the exact same function names that I previously used. Yes, because GitHub Copilot can see what's open in those tabs. So if we're working on a project, open up other relevant files in those tabs in our editor so GitHub Copilot can read it. The final piece it takes, the fourth, not the final, but the fourth piece it takes into context, it can see our project file, folder there. It can't see what's in each individual file, but it can see the structure, so it can provide us, it has a little bit more context on types of languages we've used because of the extension, and also the names of the files, so it can reference the correct files. And then the final piece of context it takes into account is the prompt that we give it. So when we're using chat, whether it's in the box on the side or in the inline chat functionality, it takes that as our context. So this is really important. And this is what stands GitHub Copilot out from other similar AI developer tooling, because it has so much context on what you're actually working in. You get really good results from it. Do have to check those results. So if we want to provide context here, so this is a completely blank file, zero context right now. So I've provided the first piece of context by saying this is sentiment.py. So I've given it a name. It goes, okay, it's probably going to be something about sentiment analysis, and I've given it an extension, which GitHub Copilot now knows this is going to be written in Python. And so it's providing me with some, straight away, okay, import request, import JSON. And it's giving me, okay, let's start, defining this function here. And we can go through, it suggests to us to use a web service, it suggests to us this URL. We're providing more and more context along the way so we can get better results from what we want. Now this is interesting. One positive examples, I love this movie. This is the best movie, I'm so happy. And then it just starts going, I'm so happy and excited. I'm so happy and excited and ecstatic. And then I'm like, I feel great. So I changed that to prompt it to use something a little bit different. Then it goes, I feel great. And then I feel amazing. I'm like, come on, GitHub Copilot, give me something a little bit better. This is when I did at NDC, and it was like, NDC Oslo is the best conference ever. I was like, NDC crew, see, GitHub Copilot thinks you're the best. And then it's given me the opposite. So it said it's the worst conference ever. And I was like, that doesn't feel very nice. So I got rid of that one. This is one I did when I was in Norway. So I was like, Norway is a beautiful country. Now, because we've got the negative examples, what do you think it's going to do? It's going to give us the opposite. So Norway is the worst conference. NDC is the worst conference. Norway is a horrible country. So we can have this more context as we're going through the file and working with GitHub Copilot. And it's provided me with the loop there so we can do our sentiment analysis. The next thing we can do to provide a little bit more context as we're working with GitHub Copilot, and I've showed you a few of these, is use these slash commands. These are relatively new, but these are really fun and gives GitHub Copilot a bit more context. So if I say slash explain, I even go a little bit further and use that at workspace. So at workspace means GitHub Copilot, look at the entire space I'm currently working with and explain to me the code. And I can also add on to the end of this a natural language question of what I want. So I might say at workspace slash explain what this first function does or how this tests work, or explain how playwright tests work, or explain how I could do this better. So we can use that. Slash doc, help me. Does everyone like writing documentation? I kind of do because I like writing, but some people don't, so we use slash docs to help us there. Slash tests is one I tried out recently too while I was writing some tests. So slash tests provide me with some tests for this. And remember when I showed you my test writing? I was specific again about what I asked. Write me tests for this, but 1 or 2 is enough for this particular case. I don't need 20 things that test for the same thing. So if we refine our prompt, we're good. Slash fixed, you saw I used that one. Love this one. Slash, just fix my code. I don't mind how you fix it, just fix it. Slash help is get a little bit more help from GitHub Copilot. And slash new I showed you as well. So slash new means create a new file, create a new thing. Now, I've shown you some Python, some JavaScript, some Java, and some COBOL. But what else is GitHub Copilot great at doing? So GitHub Copilot is really good with all the top languages that are available on the internet because GitHub Copilot has been trained on all the public code available on the internet. So any code that is available in the public realm, GitHub Copilot can help you with it. Practically speaking, it is going to be better at these languages, however, because these are the most popular languages on the internet. Therefore, there's more data points on these languages. I will also take this opportunity to say that GitHub Copilot, I've shown you that it can understand Chinese, I think it was Chinese, and that I've been writing in English. But we can use other natural languages as well. So we could talk to GitHub Copilot in German, or Japanese, or Hindi. We can talk to it in non-Latin script as well. So if we use Devanagari script, which is one of the Hindi scripts, and GitHub Copilot will understand that we're speaking in that language and therefore will respond to us in that language, in the same way we would with a human. In terms of the editors it's available in, VS Code is what I've shown you because it's my editor of choice. We can also use Visual Studio, JetBrains IDEs like PyCharm and Writer, and we can also use NeoVim as well. When it comes to GitHub Copilot Chat, it is available on those first 3. So if you want to use the GitHub Copilot Chat feature, you can use it on those 3 there. I also say that GitHub Copilot Chat, so the chat on .com is currently only available to GitHub Copilot Enterprise customers. So if you're on a GitHub Copilot Enterprise account, you'll be able to use that .com chat feature. But for now, unless you're not, you will not be able to use that feature. But why is all this stuff important? Why is it important that we can have a pair programmer to help us write our tests, write our code, translate our code, help us write things? Why is it important that we can write these things a little bit easier and be able to do all these things? Why is it important? Well, it's important because what we're seeing from these AI developer tools, not just GitHub Copilot, we're going to talk about GitHub Copilot here though, but what we're seeing is a massive increase in productivity and efficiency. Again, if you're at Damo's talk last night, he said, and this is one of my favorite quotes that I use too, is that AI isn't going to necessarily take our jobs, but people using AI will take people's jobs who are not using AI, and that is because the productivity and efficiency gains are so undeniable that if you don't have these kinds of things, you're so far behind. As developers, we've often taken the opportunity to automate when we can, to be able to do things faster, to look at optimizing processes. So why wouldn't we use something that's going to make our lives so much easier? So this is a study that Accenture actually did with 450 developers. They did it over 6 months. We've got some other studies where they're like, we don't want to do a 6-month study, we just want a 2-day studies, but this one's a 6-month study. And I'll put a link to this too, so you know I'm not making these numbers up. But what they found over the course of this study is that 94% of the developers said they stayed in the flow better. Again, if you were to get Damo's developer happiness talk yesterday, you would understand that staying in the flow is very important for developers, because the less context switching we have to do, the better and more productive we are, because we don't have to go, oh, yeah, I've got to come back to that later. How many people in this room have unfinished side projects? Yeah, a lot of time is one of those things, but a lot of it's, we often come up against a blocker and we come back to that later, and we don't come back to it. So if we can stay in the flow, we get things done and things get finished. 90% of the developers said they spent less time looking for information. I'm sorry, some certain websites that developers used to browse all the time, but developers are now spending a lot less time looking for that information, meaning they're staying in the flow, they're staying in the IDE, they're able to get their work done much faster. Productivity rates went through the roof, although this is 90% of developers reported writing better code, so that's a subjective statistic, but I still think it's important. And 88% of them said that the code that GitHub Copilot suggested to them was retained. This has gone up massively from when we first launched GitHub Copilot. But when it comes to, again, those other statistics, reported staying in the flow, reported writing better code, they're very subjective statistics in that sense. But when it comes to the efficiency, this is where I think we really see GitHub Copilot shine, which is 50% more builds. And again, the skeptic in me goes, is that 50% more good builds? Or is that just 50% more builds, regardless of how good they actually are? But no. 84% increase in the number of successful builds. So not only are they building more of the builds going out are successful by using GitHub Copilot. Finally, satisfaction. 96% of the developers said they were successful from day one. We know that that is important, because the longer it takes to onboard and understand how to use these tools, the longer it takes for us to experience that efficiency and productivity. But no, these developers said from day one, they experienced this productivity boost, this productivity gain. And 97% of them felt they were more fulfilled in their jobs. We know that's important for developers, because if we feel better about the things we're doing, we feel better about the work we're doing and the company we're working with, and the company is providing us with the best tools for the job, we're going to be more likely to stay around, right? We're also seeing some statistics around the world as well. So these are global statistics from GitHub, and I'll provide a link to this, again, so you know I'm not making it up. We've now got 1.5, this might be higher now, but 1.5 million developers using GitHub Copilot. 75% of them feeling more fulfilled. So we had 90% in the particular Accenture study, but just globally, overall, developers are feeling more fulfilled by using this type of tooling. 55% say faster coding. This is from our original research. So this was before GitHub Copilot Chat was released. So I suspect that number would be a lot higher now. And this number just blows my mind. And I'm sure that this percentage is now higher. 46% of the code now committed to the internet is written by an AI, GitHub Copilot or other. And I suspect that number is now higher. So nearly half the code on the internet is being written with the help of an AI. We have over 50,000 businesses around the world using GitHub Copilot to write and work on their proprietary code, whether using GitHub Copilot for business or GitHub Copilot for enterprise. And again, more subjective statistics as well, which is, I have to think, I love this one. I have to think less. I'm like, is that a good thing? Oh, but wait, he's saying, but when we do have to think and we do have to work on code, it's now the fun stuff. GitHub Copilot takes all that mundane stuff away from us. I don't have to go and look up the regular expression for all the punctuation marks. It just provides that with me. I don't have to go and sit there and think about what tests to write and what's a good test for this. I now get to spend more time doing the things I love. And if it is test writing, then I get to do more of that. And GitHub Copilot can help me write the code. Trying to code in an unfamiliar language. If we're working in COBOL and we're trying to translate it. Or we're Python proficient developers, but we're using JavaScript for the first time. GitHub Copilot can help us translate and interpret all these things. And this is really important. I think this is what it really comes down to. So at Collision Conf last year in June, our CEO, Thomas Dohmke, got up on stage and said, AI developer tooling, GitHub Copilot or other, will contribute, or is likely, he predicts it will contribute, 1.5 trillion tons to the global domestic product, gross domestic product. So this is why it's important. It's more efficient, we're being better as developers, we're more productive, and by doing all this, we're contributing to a better economy. So now I have experienced a lot of this myself as well, so I've showed you a few examples, but also actually some real world examples. So last year I got married, and as a developer, when you get married, you turn to GitHub, plan your wedding. It's logical. So I went to GitHub Copilot to build our website and do all those things. And I was like, GitHub Copilot, you're here to help me. I need you to help me understand what the best way is to do RSVP. Like, what do I need to get from my wedding guests for RSVP? And this works for not just weddings, but any kind of events, right? What do I need? What do I need to take into account? What do I need to get from people? What do I need to send out to them? And it comes back with, sorry, but I can only assist with programming related questions. And I was like, but I'm building a website for the wedding and I want an RSVP page. And GitHub Copilot, well, why didn't you say so? So for wedding RSVPs or event, you need to include this information, number of guests, their email addresses, what kind of things they're going to be attending, whether they'll be bringing anyone else, are there any dietary requirements, special requests, or comments. And I was like, it is a wedding planner. It is an event planner. This is great. Now, GitHub Copilot's also good at explaining things. So this is one where I said to GitHub Copilot, if I've got in my RSVPs, I've got numbers for my guests. If I don't put a number in there, what is the default number? And it says, and can I allow for like a 0 input value on this? And it goes, yeah, I can allow for that. Choose a minimum, maximum. Now, there's a little bit more to this conversation, but I tweeted this out. And I was like, GitHub Copilot's telling me, it basically told me that if I don't put a default in, the default is 0 to, whatever, to high. And I was like, yes, I learned something. And someone came back and said, that's actually not correct. Phil Nash, he's here, so if you karaoke, Phil Nash is like, that's actually not correct. If you don't put a default value in, the default is positive infinity to negative infinity, so any whole number. And I was like, oh, that's really good. So it's a very good lesson. We need to check what we are getting from our AIs, right? It's not always 100% correct. So here we go. Here's our website here. I can have some conversations with GitHub Copilot about how to make this better, how to do things a little bit better. But one thing I really had to have on our website was dark mode. And so I said, how can I do all this? So how would I make this website better? How would I enable dark mode? What else can I do? So I can even just give it some vague stuff, like how do I make my website better, which is, you should minify your JavaScript, and you should minify all your files and make sure it's better at uploading things and do all these. I was like, okay, cool, but how do I get this working, and how do I do this, and how do I get dark mode? And it's like, well, you could use this, and I was like, but how do I improve the loadings? I also couldn't get dark mode working, and it gave me all this information and steps on how to check it in the browser. And I was like, cool, it doesn't just work on code in the IDE. It can give me other information about programming related questions. It also gave me lots of ideas for my website as well. It said, you should have a photo box on there. It should have a countdown timer, so it can suggest by this little question down the bottom here. We'll see if this works. But it can suggest questions for us. Is this going to, yeah, there we go. How can I leverage browser caching for my website? So those little questions that it comes up and suggests are really useful. And by doing all this, I want to add dark mode toggle to my website. How do I do that? And it gave me some. We went back and forth on this quite a bit, but we eventually got dark mode on our website, and we were very, very happy. Yeah, sounds good. So we're able to do all these things, and by using GitHub Copilot for my website, I'm okay at doing websites, but I'm not fantastic. I didn't study as a developer. But by using GitHub Copilot for our website, instead of it taking probably about 2 weeks for me to do it, we had quite a bit of functionality, so instead of taking about 2 weeks, it was 8 hours I spent on building this. Now, some of you in the room are better developers than me, could probably get down to a lot less, but it saved us so much time. What about code that's already out there? Some people say, I'm working on some proprietary code. I need to make sure that none of my code is leaving out anywhere. So we can use these filter buttons. Now, this is on my alt account because my personal account is driven by my organization, which is GitHub, but this is on my alt account, so we can go up and we can have a look at our settings for GitHub Copilot. So we click our little button up there, we can look at settings, and we can go to our GitHub Copilot settings, and we can look at some of our tick boxes there. So if we click on GitHub Copilot on our side, we can see that these 2 main things we want to look at. So the first one is suggestions matching public code. So if we're working on something very proprietary, we want to ensure that none of our code when it says matches, it's about 150 characters, which is a bit. So if you don't want it to match anything that's on the internet, you can filter that out. You can also use that tick box. Do you want GitHub Copilot to use your things for product improvements, which fine print is we look at your code and we can use it to help train. So if we don't want to allow that, we can ensure that that isn't. Now, these things are all by default unallowed if you're using GitHub Copilot for Business or GitHub Copilot for Enterprise. This is all automatically off. But this is things you can change. If you've got a GitHub Copilot individual subscription, you can change these things yourself. And if you run an organization, you can go and look at your organization settings for GitHub Copilot. So if I have a look here, so if I'm the one who drives my organization, we can see GitHub Copilot is active for this business. That's where I can enable it for IDE, CLI, mobile, and other features. So if you work in an organization, your organization could enable or disable certain features within GitHub Copilot. So you can see there, we can access and change the management for different teams. So if you're an org owner, that's how you do that. Now, in the last 10 minutes that I've got, what is new and coming up? So GitHub Next is like our, what would you call it? Our research team. These are all the teams that work on some of the cool things that are coming next. And some of these things have been announced and we're able to talk about it. And these are some of the things that are being announced that they're publicly coming to people. So the first one is, who manages and reviews pull requests here in the room? Few people. I think it's something like more than half the pull requests on the internet don't have descriptions, which if you're reviewing pull requests, is not great. So we can use GitHub Copilot. We can have a look at this little form here. We can use GitHub Copilot to say, instead of having to go and look at all this code and look at the changes in diff, we can go up here, we can edit this, use a little GitHub Copilot symbol there, and it will write me a description and a summary for this pull request. And there we go, summary for the pull request. And it even adds in deep links to where this code is being changed. So now, there should be no excuses for anyone putting in a pull request without a good description. So you can see there, that looks good. We can update that comment. And now whoever comes to review this pull request is going to be so much happier because they don't have to go through and spend all their time reading and understanding the files that have been changed. Personalized fine-tuned models. This is coming to GitHub Copilot Enterprise customers. But I do want to talk about it because it is really cool. So now you can choose to fine-tune a model of GitHub Copilot on a number of your repositories. I think the maximum is 5 at the moment. And so this is something that is coming at the moment. I believe if you are on GitHub Copilot Enterprise, which if you want a GitHub Copilot Enterprise subscription, you need to be on GitHub Copilot Enterprise Cloud Edition. And if you'd like to sign up for this, there is a sign-up list to start and have a look at this in preview, and I'll drop a link to that so you can get your organization to sign up if you want to. The next one is GitHub Copilot extensions. So we're building out the capabilities of GitHub Copilot further with extensions. So extensions are things that some of our partners have built. You can see some here, so like Docker, Octopus, and these go into GitHub Copilot chat. So now we can talk to our Octopus deploy, our Sentry, we can ask it information about what our code is doing, some of our different features, without having to go away from our IDEs, go and look at something else, again, more context switching, and be able to do these things. So these are coming very, very soon. The next one, something lots of people are really excited about. This is in technical preview, so if you do want to sign up for this, there is a waitlist. I will drop the link. But GitHub Copilot Workspace. This is really pushing the boundaries about every time we announce something for GitHub Copilot, by the way, I'm like, wow, surely we've hit the pinnacle by now. And every time the team announces, I'm just blown away by the capabilities. So this is GitHub Copilot Workspace. This is a website I worked on. Those of you who know me very well know I have a ton of directory requirements, and so does a lot of other people. So I was like, why don't we build an app that can translate dietary requirements from one language to another, so when we're all traveling around the world, we can, actually have a good thing rather than just Google Translate. And I had people actually do so. But this is my words, and I was like, now, I added new functionality for more words, but I was like, that text box is really small. So what I can do is I can go over to GitHub where my code is sitting. I can open an issue. So here I've got, currently when you type in the text box, it's kind of small. I want to have more space. And basically, let's just make the text box bigger. Now, this is relatively simplistic change here, but we could do something a little bit more complicated, but I just wanted to choose a simple one to start with. We can have a look at this and go, okay, that looks good. And there's this new button called Open in Workspace. So we can open that in Workspace, and GitHub Copilot will analyze what we've currently got and will suggest a proposed solution for us based on what we've asked it to do. I can change this as well. So again, we don't have to blindly accept what we're given. I can add more items in to change. And when I'm satisfied with the plan, I can say, yes, let's implement this plan or provide this plan. It's like, okay, here's a plan. We need to increase the maximum width and change the padding. I'm like, oh, we also probably need to change the height because I want it to be bigger that way. And then we can go update selected files and implement these. And GitHub Copilot goes through, figures out the files that we need to change and changes those, and I can go and open it then in a code space and see these things. Now, I changed a few little things here. Again, this is all working in code spaces, so I can see there's a box there. This is all working on code spaces through Workspace, and GitHub Copilot is able to provide us with some suggestions. Because it's running in a code space, I have full development capabilities, so I just ran and debugged that then, and we can see that's there working. I can go back into our code, and I can go and change things. I can add more items. So even after GitHub Copilot has implemented the plan, I can go back and change things. So I actually want to allow for this search box to add more text in to be seen by the user. And that's not quite what I want. Let's actually add a multi-line text area. And we can now go and implement that new thing that I added into it as well. In GitHub Copilot, we can see it there. Change the text box to a text area, can set multiple words. So I'm working with GitHub Copilot again. I'm not just saying, here's an issue, go and implement a plan, and then, yeah, that looks good, open pull request, commit. That's not the way to do good development. And I can add in files that I want to look at and change as well here. So GitHub Copilot's adding in a file there. I can change a few things. So again, I'm not blindly accepting what I'm given. I can go through, I can change a few things. I changed a few other things here, but I thought that was a bit boring to show you every single change that I made in here. This is looking good. So here's our translate. Text box is a little bit bigger. Once we have a look at that, we can go through, we've run the tests, we've done good development, I ran the tests, they all worked, and now we can go and commit that, and once we've got a good commit message there, like good developers, fix the search box, add that in, that's all looking good. Now we can go back over and see our, yep, that looks good, sync our changes. We can go back over and see this running in the UI with GitHub Actions. Again, checks have all passed, this is looking great. We can now merge this request. Like good developers, we've done the right thing. We've worked with GitHub Copilot. We've checked our code. We've merged our code. And we can see we now have a much bigger trend. And this is live. You can go and check this as well. And those are actually my legitimate directory requirements. So if anyone knows some Danish to translate those couple of words, feel free. Last quick example. This is JS13K Games. Has anyone heard of JS13K Games? Game competition, you have to build a game in JavaScript or HTML. It has to be less than 13 kilobytes. And what they've done is they've given us this fantastic thing called JS13K Games Breakouts, which is a template you can use for games. I forked this template, opened up an issue and said, I want to use this current template for creating this game, and here's the new requirements I have.
I just wanted to use Phaser because it's new and fancy for me. So I said, let's just go and change all these things, implement changes. GitHub Copilot looks and goes, here's the current thing you've got, here's the new proposed thing, and here's all the files that we're going to change. That all looks good. We can implement those selected files, and I've sped that up because it takes a little bit longer than that. But GitHub Copilot, we can see it changing in real time. So we can see all the things it's added and changed. So this is really fun. If you are on the technical preview for this, go and have a look. And if not, go and sign up for it. It's super fun, and you can just play around with it and get GitHub Copilot to do all kinds of fun things. So what do we cover today? We're right on schedule. We've looked at generative AI, how it's different to traditional AI and traditional technologies. We looked at some of the applications. Yay, a lot of you are using it in the room. Looked at GitHub Copilot, how we can use it, and the idea of prompt engineering, working with it, checking our code, and ensuring that we're getting the right thing out of our pair programmer. Looked at the type of languages and platforms we can use GitHub Copilot with, and we looked at this idea of developer productivity. The productivity efficiency gains are so undeniable from AI tooling that it is here to stay, and we need to understand how to use it well. And we looked at some of the new things coming too. So action pointers from you all. Try GitHub Copilot. If you haven't tried it, for those hands up who haven't tried it, come to our workshop. It's going to be fun. We'll be there, so we'll answer all your questions. You'll get a free trial of GitHub Copilot for a few days. You can try it out, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Practice some of those good prompt engineering techniques. Think about that if you didn't get the right answer from your AI tooling, how could I refine it? How could I change it? So think about that. Good testing practices as well. While we're working with our code, we can get GitHub Copilot to help us with that. Use alongside our existing tools. So I've used it alongside the IDEs there and also GitHub Actions. So we don't have to learn this as a completely new thing and go and download some fancy new thing. We use it in our IDE. We can use it in our command line. It's going to be really good. And then experience that productivity boost from being able to use this kind of stuff. Finally, sign up for any of the betas and previews. Again, GitHub Copilot is free for 30 days. If you haven't tried it, go and have a look. And follow GitHub on all the social medias for all the updates, because we'll be tweeting those out and sending those out. And finally, we have GitHub Universe later this year. So if you're going to be in San Francisco, come and join us. It's going to be awesome. This is where we announce all our big, shiny new things coming. I can probably guarantee there'll be some updates to GitHub Copilot. And if you can't come to San Francisco, tune in virtually from anywhere in the world. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are those resources I mentioned, so you know I wasn't just spouting out nonsense when I put those statistics up. So capture that. I'll also tweet it out afterwards. And if you have any questions, we are at time now. Please come and chat to me. There's a lot of stickers up on the stage here, so feel free to come grab some stickers. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Copenhagen Developers Festival. Thank you all for being here on a Friday morning.